Lately, there's been a lot of hype with a new company called MIXWAVE, owned by the producer Taylor Larson. They do amp sims and drum kits, and they claim they are the best in the market. So I wanted to compare them with getgooddrums, which are the drum libraries I have been using over the last years. So to compare getgooddrums with MIXWAVE, I will be using GGD Invasion, MIXWAVE Gojira, and MIXWAVE Tony Royster. The first thing I'd like to mention is that unlike here that in Invasion that I can have a snare top and bottom separately, it's impossible to do it with one instance here of Gojira. So here I have a snare top, only top in stereo 2, and then I added another instance of Gojira only with the snare, and I went to snare, I put the stereo 3 instead of 2, I only solo it snare bottom. And then if you go here in this icon, you can choose the port and you have to put the same port, in this case A1, as the one above. Then in this case, the sound will go to the same place. So these are the raw kits using external processing. For example, this is the processing for the Invasion kick. This is for the snare. Basically some highs and some lows, in some cases not in Invasion because the snare in Invasion is so heavily compressed. Can you hear the attack? But in Gojira I added some compression with a slow attack, and also they all have some parallel compression. One thing that it's worth mentioning is that the cymbals in Invasion are a little bit harsh, so I put this EQ and I made them chime much more than, for example, the cymbals in Gojira or the cymbals in Tony Royster that aren't EQ'd at all. So let's hear them in action with this groove I prepared. This is Invasion. What I like a lot about this is, well, the overall sound and especially the room sound, which is really good. If we go to MIXWAVE, you'll see that the room is much closer, not as large as Invasion. The same thing happens in Tony Royster. Something I really like about Tony Royster is the crash sound. Really good. And the Invasion cymbal, good as well. Let's hear this snare roll. Good velocity control. Good as well, but here Tony Royster one. It goes from really quiet to really loud. Quite robotic, I think. To compare the velocity layers, I prepared this test. So now we're going to hear the snare of Invasion. So I really like the velocity variety it has, although there's some kind of volume compensation in this part more or less when it goes higher. So it has the same volume here and here more or less. I would prefer it had a more natural volume all the time. Let's hear now Gojira. And this is Tony Royster. So if you can hear this, it's like it's really stepped, really low, more aggressive, but with some huge steps. So for me, Tony Royster is not as smooth as the others in terms of velocity control. Let's hear Invasion kick. Gojira. And Tony Royster. Well, the problem is not as big as with the snare, but it's the same. Now with the right crash. Gojira. And Tony Royster. And finally, let's come back to Invasion and we'll hear the right and the hi-hat. Gojira. And Tony Royster. In MIXWAVE, as you may know, we have the option to mix and boost all the drums, and the kit will sound like this. So in order to compare this sound with Invasion, I will have to add some kick and snare samples, and then Invasion would sound like this. So as you can hear, you will easily make it sound huge, adding some kick sample and especially some snare room sample. One thing I really hate about Gojira is this China. I don't know, sounds bad. I prefer this one. Finally, let's hear Tony Royster with onboard mix and boost. has a really good snare, but as I mentioned before, the velocity control is not really accurate. But yeah, this snare would be really useful to complete the sound of Invasion, for example, or another kit. So let's compare MIXWAVE and getgooddrums with music, with multitracks that will sound good for sure. This is Invasion.
From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't escape me. But why should I care? From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't. Why should I care? There's a place so dark you can't see the end. Skies. The rain then sends dripping. Acidic questions, forcefully. The power of suggestion. Then with the eyes shut, you can. World of pretend, and the eyes ease open and it's dark again. From the top to the bottom.
And in this case I will be using Tony Royster with the smaller snare number 2.
From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't escape me. But why should I care? Core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't escape me. But why should I care? Guys cock back, shotgun which can't defend.
These are the real ones.
From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't escape me. But why should I care? From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle of my thoughts. Take it far from my safety. The picture's there, the memory won't escape me. But why should I care? There's a place so dark you can't see the end. Skies cocked back, shotgun which can't defend. The rain then sends dripping. Acidic questions, forcefully. The power of suggestion. Then with the eyes shut, looking through the rust and rotten dust. A small spot of light floods the floor and pours over the rusted world of pretend. And the eyes ease open and it's dark again. From the top to the bottom to top I stop. At the core I forgot, in the middle.
In this case both sound really good. In this context I used kick and snare samples and some snare reverb. One advantage of Invasion is it has a huge variety of snare sounds. And now let's go to a heavier context using Invasion again and MIXWAVE Gojira. This is Invasion. Gojira. I prefer Gojira toms, I like them. Let's hear Gojira with music. Invasion. The crash from Gojira, it's like if it stops. Clack, 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 and it has no continuity. I prefer the one in Invasion, and also, as I mentioned before, I prefer the China from Invasion. Let's hear it. With music. I know it's getting and this is Gojira.
I know it's getting late. I don't care what they say, you know I wanna sing.
Invasion again.
I know it's getting late. I don't care what they say, you know I wanna sing.
Again, both have additional samples. It would be impossible to sound good in this kind of music without them. These are the ones from Invasion. And in Gojira. Well, they are everything. Maybe I will do another video talking about samples and the importance of layering in drums, but without them it's impossible to sound good. And that's why it's important that if you use virtual drums, the cymbals are good, because they are the natural part. You won't be adding samples to them, and they have to sound good, cymbals and also the room. And in this case, in my opinion, Invasion wins. I think MIXWAVE put out some good drum libraries, but they fail in two key and crucial aspects: the cymbals and the velocity layers. I'm looking forward to new GGD libraries, as I think P4 and One Kid Wonder Kids don't sound as good as Invasion. See you next time!